Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today we are diving into a Form 8K filing. Now usually 8Ks aren't that exciting, kind of like watching paint dry, but this one has a few interesting twists, especially when it comes to who's in charge. We'll see if Gorman-Rupp is pumping profits or just plain pumping. This Form 8K is a current report filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, by the Gorman-Rupp company on April 24, 2025. These reports let investors know about major events that could affect a company. The main point of this filing is to share the results from the company's annual shareholder meeting. This is where shareholders, the people who own a piece of the company, get to vote on important things, like who sits on the board of directors and how executives are paid. The annual meeting happened virtually, meaning it was online on April 24, 2025. A total of about 26.2 million shares were eligible to be voted. Around 23.3 million shares were represented either in person or by proxy. A proxy is when someone lets another person vote their shares for them. Since they had enough shares represented, they had what's called a quorum, which means they could officially hold the meeting and vote on the issues. First, the shareholders voted to set the number of directors, the people who oversee the company, at 9. Then they voted to elect those 9 people to the board. They will hold their positions until the next annual meeting. Let's look at how people voted for each director. Donald Bullock got about 23,000 votes withheld, meaning people didn't want to vote for him. About 223,000 votes withheld, meaning people didn't want to vote for him. About 2.6 million shares were broker non-votes. This happens when brokers holding shares for clients don't get instructions on how to vote, so they can't vote on you 6 million votes for, with only about 75,000 withheld. Scott King got about 25 million votes for, with about 40,000 withheld. Scott King got about 25,000 withheld. Scott King got about 20 million votes for, and about 340,000 withheld. Scott King got about 27 million votes for, with only 7,000 withheld. Pamela Heminger had about 97 million votes for, and roughly 87,000 withheld. Pamela Heminger had about 246 million votes for, and roughly 87,000 withheld. Pamela Heminger had about 24 bill and 5,000 withheld. Scott King got about 25 million votes for, with about 305 million votes for, and roughly 8,000 withheld. All 9 directors were elected since. Next, shareholders voted on the compensation or pay of the company's top executives. This vote is advisory, meaning the company doesn't have to follow it, but it's a way for shareholders to voice their opinion on executive pay. About 19.9 million shares voted in favor of the executive compensation, while about 60,000 voted against it. Roughly a 117,000 shares abstained, meaning they didn't vote either way. Again, about 2.6 million shares were broker non-votes. While the vote passed, the relatively high number of votes against could signal that some shareholders aren't happy with how much the executives are making. The last item was to ratify or approve the appointment of Ernst & Young LL as the company's independent auditor for the year. The auditor checks the company's financial statements to make sure they're accurate. About 22.7 million shares voted in favor of keeping Ernst & Young as the auditor. About 523,000 voted against, and roughly 84,000 abstained. The appointment was ratified, meaning the company will continue to use Ernst & Young as its auditor. Finally, the company included a press release as an exhibit to the report. This press release announces the election of a new independent directors. Independent directors are important to the company's management team so they can provide unbiased oversight. The news release confirms the election of the directors we discussed earlier. While the 8K doesn't detail the specific qualities of the new director, their independence is key for corporate governance. Now let's take a step back and see what this all means. The Gorman-Rupp company seems to have had a pretty standard annual meeting. All proposed directors were elected and the auditor was ratified. The advisory vote on executive compensation, while approved, showed some shareholder discontent, which might need to be addressed by the company. The addition of a new independent director is generally a positive sign, as it can improve oversight and governance. One thing to note is the number of broker non-votes across all items. This could suggest that the company needs to do a better job of communicating with its shareholders and making it easier for them to vote. Looking at the bigger picture, Gorman-Rupp appears to be maintaining its course. No red flags are jumping out from this report, but it's always important to keep an eye on how companies respond to shareholder concerns, especially regarding executive compensation. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe for more corporate deep dives. Let me know in the comments which company you'd like me to decode next.